Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. This is our WWE show for the week. My name is George Coles. Let's get right into the show. The first match of the night we have is Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton in part 3 in the last week or so. Now last Monday, the last Raw, we had Daniel Bryan lost the match due to not being able to continue because he had a stinger. And then on SmackDown, Bryan wins by countout but does not want to win that way. So Bryan does a little promo. Orton comes out and says, let's just fight. So they start fighting, tearing up the ringside. Eventually the match gets thrown out. We go to the back. Daniel Bryan demands that they get a match later, and we'll see, because Vince eventually asks Vicky. The whole McMahon clan goes to Vicky saying, what do you think we should do? And we'll see later what happens with that. Now our next match of the night was the Rhodes Scholars versus Sheamus and Christian. If you guys remember correctly, last week, Sheamus fought the Rhodes Scholars on his own. Now this was an interesting match. Pretty well fought. At the end of the match, we had a spot where Cody tags himself in without Damian Sandow knowing. They stumble into the entrance. He pushes Sandow out of the way only to catch a brogue kick and lose. Starting a little bit of dissension in the ranks of the Rhodes Scholars. Maybe a full breakup is happening soon. Now coming off of that, we have our next match, Caitlyn versus Oksana. It was an okay match. The highlight of it is AJ Lee coming out dressed like Caitlyn with, I guess, some kind of fake puffy suit, had the pants, the shirt, even put her hair like her. And then Big E Langston came out and pretty much mocked the angle where Big E said he was Caitlyn's secret admirer. The segment wasn't great, but I enjoy the effort they're putting into building a woman's feud, a divas feud. I give them props and kudos for this. Normally we have women's matches are just thrown together, no one cares, no one knows why they're fighting each other. But this one, they're actually building the feud and giving it a slow burn, which is really brings it back. I'd like to see this. This feud is probably the most important as far as WWE-wise women's feud since Lita and Trish. And that's saying a lot. Now coming off of that, we have an excellent match between Alberto Del Rio and Y2J Chris Jericho. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Of course, we had Ziggler run in again at the end. I really think that by the time we get to the Money in the Bank pay-per-view that they're going to add Y2J into the mix with all the interaction he's had with both of them. Kind of liven up the feud and make it a three-way match. I mean, you got three absolutely great wrestlers in the ring. And why not do a three-way? People like them. And it gives more depth to it, in my opinion. Now, off of that, we got our big reveal for the night. The WWE 2K14 video game cover reveal, which everybody knew, or most people knew, because Stephanie already said what it was going to be. It's The Rock. It is what it is. Cover looks good. It looks like a 2K game. I mean, it'll probably sell really well. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. Because I want to go right into our question of the week from this. And the question was, have you enjoyed better the 2 months since WrestleMania or the 2 month lead up to WrestleMania? Now we're going to go with some of the answers from our friends out there before we get into mine here. The first is from our friend Handsome Pat Fannin. We knew about Taker, Punk, Triple H, Brock, and Cena Rock months before WrestleMania. The months after WrestleMania have been unpredictable. Now the next is from Danae Hernandez. I hope I'm pronouncing your first name right. Since WrestleMania. Simple and plain, got right to the point. And last but not least, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Aaron Least. And it says, 2 months since, the wrestling between the Shield and Hell No has been great. I think the storylines and pay-per-views have been much better also. Also think the heel and face turns has opened up some nice possible feuds. Overall, I'm excited about the young and returning talent as well. I think they all hit it right the nail on the head. I think everything that's happened since WrestleMania, the Ziggler cash-in, the Fandango craze, CM Punk coming and going, the Shield continuing to dominate, Daniel Bryan putting it into the highest gear possible and absolutely blowing everybody away. Team Hell No breaking up. I mean, Curtis Axel. I think I said Curtis Axel. The Wyatt families vignettes. I mean, Randy Orton coming back and putting on some excellent matches after going through the motions for a while. It's been rather interesting, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the Raws since WrestleMania, particularly this one and the last one have been really exciting, and it's kudos to the writing that they're getting better and better, and they're building storylines a lot better than they were even before setting up WrestleMania, which is supposed to be, historically, the lead up to WrestleMania is the greatest lead up of the year. But it seems like this year, the lead up between WrestleMania and SummerSlam is even better. Now, going back to what we touched on just before this, was the 2K14 cover. Now, we're going to turn this into this question of the week. There was a lot of Facebook chat and Twitter, a lot of tweets. A lot of people have put out videos on YouTube saying stuff about this. People just don't like the fact that The Rock's on the cover. Wouldn't be my first pick if I was making the cover. I understand why they did. However, we're going to go ahead and make that into a question of the week. If you are against The Rock being on 2K14's cover, who do you think they should have put on the cover? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter. Put it down where? Down there. Right down in the comments, folks. And it is what it is. I understand the argument against. I understand why. For a marketing standpoint, the reason they put him on there, I do understand. And I'm not saying if you're a fan of The Rock and you want to see him on there, let us know that too. But if you're not, let us know who you think deserved it better than The Rock. Now, coming off of that, we have Ryback versus the Great Khali. I think this is a great match to get us back to the point where Ryback is becoming a monster again. We've seen him not do so well in recent months, and specifically on pay-per-views as of late. I thought this was a really good match to bring him back. You fight a guy as big as Khali, former world champion, even though no one really cares about his championship run, but it shows us why Ryback was a threat in the first place. Good match though. And speaking of, and then they had a little interaction with Y2J and Ryback, setting up a match. I believe it's on SmackDown. It might be next Monday night. I might be wrong. I'm sorry if I am. But I believe it is SmackDown. No, it is Monday. I'm sorry, folks. Either way, let me know which one it is, because obviously I'm confused on it. But next we go into John Cena's promo for the night. He came out and he talked about the significance of the world title, and he showed some passion, and he didn't throw out too many of the corny jokes that are so synonymous with John Cena. I thought this was a good promo by him. It fell flat on the crowd. The crowd was absolutely bored, and the crowd, they weren't buying into it, and it took away from the quality of what he was saying. What he was saying, if the crowd would have had a better reaction, what he was saying would have been awesome. I mean, the thing was, though, he should have been able to switch gears on the fly. We seen a couple weeks back when him and Ryback were dueling with a feud where Cena kind of took the reins and switched switch the promo up to get the crowd more into it, and in this case he didn't. But I thought it was a good delivery, good promo. I just think the crowd interaction, which ultimately is the most important thing, how the crowd reacts at the live show, whether you want to say it or not, helps judge how the people watching are reacting. That's a microcosm. The people that buy tickets are the people that watch your show. If the crowd there is not reacting in a positive way, the crowd at home is not either. And I'm sorry to say they didn't for this one. And hate John Cena or love John Cena, when he wants to, he can get a crowd involved and he can get a crowd to react, whether negative or positive. Now we have the next match is a three-way tag team match for the #1 contendership for the tag team titles. We have Tons of Funk versus the three-man band versus the Uso brothers. Uso brothers win pretty clean, and looks like we're going to continue with the push of the Usos, which I'm really happy about. I think they're an excellent tag team. Out of the tag teams in the WWE, I think they're, if not the best, they're just behind the Shield. Rollins and Reigns, of course, but I think that it's a long time coming. I'd like to see them get a tag team title run. I like the addition of the War Paint. I think it's great. I'm happy for them. And then it's the tease at the end when Rollins and Reigns come halfway down the steps and just stare them down. But it was good. I'm happy for the Usos. Next we have CM Punk and Paul Heyman airing dirty laundry in the ring. Punk says to Heyman, "I'm going to destroy Brock Lesnar. That's my goal." Heyman rationalizes with him, says, "I had no idea he was here. His contract's over. He didn't tell me he was going to be here." Punk eventually decides that, I'm going to trust you. An excellent segment with two of the absolute best talkers in the business going back and forth with each other. Two guys where you don't want to believe Paul Heyman. However, you can understand by the way the promo went why CM Punk would. They talk about their history in Ohio Valley Wrestling and ECW and how Paul Heyman put his neck out for CM Punk and kept CM Punk when John Laurinaitis was wanting to fire him every day. I thought it was great. I thought it leads up to everything that we're going to see from CM Punk this summer, which I assume at some point, probably SummerSlam, since we'll talk about what CM Punk's going to be involved in late Money in the Bank in a little bit. But I assume at SummerSlam, him and Brock Lesnar are going to go at it finally, one-on-one, which should be a freaking amazing match. I mean, you got one of the greatest wrestlers in the world in CM Punk, and one hell of a wrestling talent and an intimidating monster in Brock Lesnar. A lot of people haven't liked Brock Lesnar since he's been back. A lot of it's due to the part-time thing. But if you go back and you watch Brock Lesnar's matches with Eddie Guerrero, this is what I think that this will be. It'll be like Brock and Eddie again. And that was amazing. And this should live right up to that. And speaking of CM Punk, he was in our next match against Darren Young of the Primetime Players. I absolutely loved this match. CM Punk was going to win. Everybody knew he was going to win. But he made Darren Young look like $1 million and he was hanging with the champion. That Darren Young was getting an offense and hurting CM Punk. And CM Punk was selling for him. This is how you put a guy that's lower on the card over. You give him the opportunity to shine. You don't need to win in professional wrestling to move up the card. This made Darren Young look very credible, in my opinion. And after the match, obviously, you have Titus O'Neil comes in. They start to attack CM Punk, which brings out Curtis Axel to make the save as sent by Heyman. CM Punk looks at Heyman after the match. You could hear Heyman going, "I had to. I wasn't going to let you get beat up. You're my best friend. I had to do it." They continue in the dressing room, which they let us know that they've set up a tag team match now. I know this one is next week. The Primetime Players versus CM Punk and Curtis Axel. I look forward to it. I think it's going to be a great match. I like the dichotomy adding Curtis Axel into the CM Punk Brock Lesnar thing. I like Paul Heyman still trying to weasel his way into being in CM Punk's corner. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great promo, a good match that came off of it, a good after match segment. I mean, it's anytime you can put CM Punk and Paul Heyman together, it's going to be gold. Now, speaking of gold, the next thing we have is Stephanie McMahon naming, she didn't really introduce them, the participants for the WWE Championship Money in the Bank ladder match, which are the before mentioned CM Punk, the Goat Face Killer, Daniel Bryan, the Viper Randy Orton, the Celtic Warrior Sheamus, the Instant Classic Christian, the Big Red Machine Kane, the whole fucking show, Rob Van Dam. Stacked setup. I mean, you got all former world champions at some point or another. I mean, every single one of them has either held the WWE title or the World Heavyweight Championship, and if you haven't read the spoilers, I'm not going to spoil it for you. It leaves the World Championship side, the Money in the Bank for them, a little bit lacking top tier talent. Not that there's not great wrestlers in it, because it's going to be a great Money in the Bank match as well. However, your main event wrestlers all seem to be in this match. It's very face heavy. Every single person on there, with the exception of Rob Van Dam, because we don't know how he's going to be booked, is being booked as a face right now. CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton, Sheamus, Christian, and Kane are all faces. So I expect maybe an Orton change by the time the pay-per-view comes around. Maybe Rob Van Dam is heel. Who knows? So, but I think it's going to be a very enjoyable match. And after that, we have Mark Henry coming out to talk about John Cena. I thought it was a decent promo. Nowhere near on the level of the retirement speech, but serviceable. Mark Henry, I know some of our friends, specifically, and I hate to put you out there like this guy, Paul, but I know Paul's tired of him and thinks that because of his years and years of just being on the roster and not really doing nothing, he's never been a fan, and he's never going to be a fan. And he thinks that he's collected a paycheck for a long time, which I kind of agree on. However, for the past 2-3 years, he's flipped on the switch, and Mark Henry's absolutely as good, if not better, than he's ever been. And we're talking about Now Show, so I agree with Paul on that, and there are people that are never going to like Mark Henry, people that didn't like Sexual Chocolate, that didn't like his tag team with D'Lo, that didn't like his tag team with MVP. I mean, that didn't like the guy that just stood around and was in battle royals and such. I think his character development now has made him very interesting. He's going to be a very credible opponent for John Cena, so much so that I think there is a question whether Henry is going to beat him or not. Whereas last month, I had no question that Ryback was. I knew that Cena was beating him. But we go right into the main event, and the fans got to choose the stipulation. It was either going to be a lumberjack match, no disqualification, or Falls Count Anywhere. And they chose Falls Count Anywhere. We had Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton again. I don't know how much I could say to praise this match. This was two guys that went out there and said to themselves, we're going to steal the show. I think Randy Orton being in the program with Daniel Bryan has made Randy Orton better and give a crap more than he has in the past 5 years. I think Daniel Bryan being in there with a guy like Randy Orton and taking the best that Orton could give and giving it right back, especially bodes well for him being a top-tier main event wrestler for the next coming years. I thought this was an absolute fantastic match. It was amazing, the level of the violence. They each put each other through tables. There were some vicious chair shots, some chair shots with the kendo stick. The end comes with Daniel Bryan putting the yes/no label lock on and instead of holding him with his arms, holding his face with the kendo stick, where Randy Orton taps out. I mean, for Randy Orton to tap out to Daniel Bryan, that means a lot to Daniel Bryan's career, and that means a lot about the guy that Randy Orton is at this point and how much he respects Daniel Bryan, that he's willing to do that. Because tapping out is a little bit more than just a pin. Tapping out means you quit. They made you quit. They're better than you, basically. In my opinion. And I don't know, I could be wrong. That's just how I view it. And I thought this was a fantastic match. I thought Randy Orton looked amazing. I thought Daniel Bryan looked amazing. I think that this is another incident where the winner and loser doesn't really matter. Both guys come out looking out great. I have a lot more respect for Randy Orton after the match than I had going into it. And I think this is just another step in the ascension of Daniel Bryan to being the guy, being the number one guy in WWE. I think he's coming for John Cena's head, and he's going to put it on a stick soon, and he's going to be the number one guy. I would not be shocked if by SummerSlam, Daniel Bryan is your WWE champion, and champion for a long time. I mean, he's that damn good right now. But basically, before I turn this into a 30-minute Daniel Bryan love fest, let's go right into our rating system for the show. Now, if you've seen the show before, we rate everything on a 1 to 5 system. Basically, a 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. 1's a John Cena, 2's a Big Show, 3's a Sheamus, 4's a Daniel Bryan, 5's a CM Punk. I'm giving this a 4. Daniel Bryan, not quite as good as last week's show, but still very enjoyable and still very entertaining. A couple of takeaways I didn't like. The 3-way tag match, I would have liked to see the primetime players in there instead of maybe Tons of Funk or 3MB. Between the naming of the Money in the Bank contestants and the WWE 2K4 reveal, that took up a lot of time. But, you know, other than that, pretty solid all the way through. Just not as good as last week's. But I'd give it a solid 4, give it a Daniel Bryan. I thought it's, you know, really good. Just 2 good Raws in a row, which always gets you happy and always excited. I'm ready for next week's. I'm ready for SmackDown. I'm ready for main event. You know, it's got, when you put good wrestling on, it keeps the viewer enthralled and ready to go to the next level and ready to stick with it. And before I do sign off on this show, I did want to bring something else up about Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton. I've had the pleasure of listening to a lot of legends, and in shoot interviews and regular interviews. A couple times I've had the opportunity to speak to some myself. And it's interesting that a point that a lot of legends I've heard say in these interviews or tell me personally is that they look at the card and who goes on first and who goes on last are the guys the company trusts the most. I thought it was really interesting with that in the back of my head that Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton opened the show and closed the show. Just saying, I don't think that it's much longer going to be John Cena's show, and I think this Daniel Bryan is the future, and Daniel Bryan is going to be the guy they're going to hitch their wagon to. My opinion. And could be, I'm a little biased because I'm absolutely positively a Daniel Bryan fan. But basically that's all I have to say for this show. My name has been George Coles, and this has been Heel Heat.